What's going on, guys? Ben from JK Gear and Gadgets, and welcome back to another video of the JK 1-ton swap video series. It is finally the day where we are going to put our Dana 60 under the Jeep. It's not completely done. For the most part, it is ready to bolt under the Jeep. I could keep it here for another week or two and, finish up every little thing, but I'm running out of time. I'm running out of room in my garage, so I need to move this axle out of the way under the Jeep so I can finish up some stuff on the rear. Still have a lot of videos to make, talking about brakes, your ABS compatibility, wheel speed sensors for the rear and front, all that good stuff. I'm still going to talk about that, but I can't really move forward in the swap until this is out of the way. So, went ahead and tore everything on the front axle apart last night. It is ready to be rolled from the Jeep. Now, I didn't want to record all this because if you're at this portion of the swap, you should be able to pull your own axle. But a few real quick tips and tricks. Jack the axle up, put jack stands 6-ton for that extra length, put them on the frame both sides. Go ahead and disconnect your drag link from the pitman arm, take off your track bar, lower the axle down after removing your wheels and tires, undo your shocks, pop your springs out. Go ahead and take off your caliper, but leave it connected to the brake line. If you go ahead and disconnect it, all your brake fluid's gonna drain out and it's gonna be a pain to bleed later on. After all that is done, everything's disconnected, our wheel speed sensors, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead and jack it back up, put the tires and wheels back on, and then come over here and disconnect your control arms. So once that's all done, and of course your drive shaft, the axle is ready to be rolled out. Now you don't have to put your tires and wheels back on if you have a group of people, but since I'm doing this myself, don't have anybody coming over here to help me. I got to do this all myself, so the easiest way is to leave the tires on so we can just roll it out. But with that being said, this is going to be a fun project. That Dana 60 is very, very heavy. It's probably at 700, 800 pounds right now, so I'm going to have to find a way to get it from the garage over here. But I'm not worrying about that yet. The first thing I want to do is rip out the Dana 44. Now, I know a lot of you are going to start asking, Ben, I want to buy your axles. I really don't know what to do with them yet. I've had hundreds of people ask to buy them. They're like, oh, I want them, let me know the price, I'll buy them. It wouldn't be fair to pick one person, so I'm either gonna save them to put them under the LJ, or we'll do a giveaway like we did with the Ultimate Dana 44. So stay tuned for that. I haven't made up my mind yet. I just don't think it's right to choose one buyer, or, like some people would do, is jack the price up, a couple thousand higher until it kind of, knock some of the other people out. But I'm not going to do that. That's really unfair. So stay tuned. We're going to rip this axle out and go ahead and start installing our Dana 60. Well, I didn't plan this out too well. I want to get the axle out of the way, but I think I moved the Jeep too close to the garage, where I'm not really going to be able to get it out of here. We'll see. Alright guys, well, the axle is pulled and it's sitting right there. And we have some extremely sketchy stuff going on. I actually went to a friend's house and borrowed his engine hoist, and this is extremely sketchy. I'm doing this myself, like I said. Definitely plan this out, have a few friends come over. So right now I have like a 700-pound axle chilling here. I'm gonna have to kind of work this out of my garage. And check out my new rug. Got that on Amazon for $11. I love it. It's worth 100, clearly. I'll put that in the video description. It's like the perfect little garage mat. But I have to somehow figure out how to wheel that over to here and slide it under the Jeep. What I think I'm gonna do is grab the jack stands, put the axle on the jack stands right here. I have one beadlock mounted up, ready to go. I think I'm gonna do the same thing. Mount the wheels and tires on the axle, rotate it into place, and try to finagle it in there. Only bad thing is that the beadlock, my old beadlock that I need to take off, I can't break the bead just with the high lift because the Jeep's on jack stands and the LJ is not heavy enough. So I'm probably gonna have to take this wheel and tire combo into the shop, break the bead, bring it back here, reinstall the new 8 lugs on the my old tire before I can even do that. But I'm gonna try to wheel this axle out of the garage without killing myself or dropping it. So let's set up the GoPro and see how difficult this is gonna be. This is really sketchy, but let's do it. I did not mean to drop it that quick. Wow. But, oh man, no, no. That's unfortunate. A little redneck ingenuity here, hopefully. Let's see what happens. Oh. And just like that, the axle is starting to come together. It's crazy to see how good it looks out here in the sun, man. We'll take a sneak peek at the wheels here soon. But like I said, I have to run into town to unmount that other beadlock to put on this side. So once that's done, we'll roll it in. But this is looking amazing. One thing I want to say is that I'm really impressed with the steelet. So you guys, you know, I painted this tie rod steelet gray a while ago, and you saw how the tie rod was hitting the engine hoist, and it didn't scratch it up. So it's awesome to know that steelet is like semi, like you know, powder coat in a way where it can withstand scratches better than standard spray paint. But this is looking sick. Let's take a look at the wheels real quick. Oh, I'll talk about wheels and all the selections for 8-lug wheels on axles like this. Like I said, in another video, I'll probably devote it all to wheels. And I also have a cool little install for coming up for you guys. Installing a set of monster valves. Sweet, the fastest way to air down, and paired with the power tank, it's incredibly fast airing up. That's enough of me talking. Let me go into town, mount this other, and you know, finish up getting that other wheel mounted so we can slide this out of the Jeep. But man, this is gonna be sick. Go throw it on the axle. Pretty dang close. So at this point, the axle's underneath. It's not perfectly centered, but what I really want to try to do first is at least get one side of the lower control arms on. So what I'm gonna have to do here is keep spinning the axle, moving it back and forth until I can get that lower control arm in and possibly the upper. That way it'll kind of center the axle where we want it to be. Once one side's done, we're gonna do the same on the other. And then after that, we're gonna go from there. So it's definitely gonna be pretty difficult moving this axle in place. But sadly, it's a 1-ton swap. Nothing's too easy. This job is no joke. Just finished up getting all the control arms in, and it's pretty straightforward. One thing I will show you guys is since the axle is a lot wider, you can tell the frame mount on that side is a lot closer than this side. So see how it angles out? What that means is that you're gonna have to use control arms that don't have bushings on both ends. So at least one side needs to have a heim joint or some type of flex joint so you can get that misalignment. Now, on mine, I had the Rubicon Express, still have them, they are garbage. Originally, how it's supposed to be is the heim joint side at the axle end and the bushing side up here. Now with that setup, I could not get this outward movement. And as you can tell, let's get a little sideways shot. See how it sits a little more out instead of straight from the frame directly to the axle. And that's because on this axle, since the pumpkin is so big, that link has to be moved far out, so this one has to be moved far out in order to maintain the right geometry. Now, what I had to do was just simply flop them around. So right now, the heim joint or flex joint is on the frame side, and our bushing's over there. It's under a little bit of preload, a little bit of tension, so we are gonna lose some flex, but this is just temporary. So for those of you that are running rock crawler arms, metal cloak, those should be good to go because both of the sides have flex joints, whereas mine had a bushing on one side and that's now over there. So that bolted up pretty easily. We got the uppers mounted in, and I didn't really change any settings right now. So all this is just how it was when I took the axle off. But we will have to come back in a few minutes or later on once everything's done to adjust where our axle is centered, our caster angle, pinion angle, all that stuff will come later. But with all the control arms in, it's time to go ahead and jack up the axle, pop these wheels and tires off, and lower the axle back down to the ground so we can reinstall our shocks and springs. Our track bar right now is definitely out of alignment. As you can tell, this side is way pushed over compared to this side. So once we lower the axle down, we'll be able to swing it a little bit and hook up our track bar. But overall, like actually putting this axle under the Jeep is not that hard, but you guys can tell how wide this is. And this is with I think 4 1/4 inch backspace wheels. So if you went with a 3 1/2 inch, it would stick out about, you know, an inch more, which would start getting pretty crazy. But like always, I mean, with the Barnes kit, the swap truss kit, everything lines up pretty smoothly. You know, you might have to do a few adjustments here and there on my the lower bushings on the control arms. Since they're at an angle kind of, I did have to grind the little metal sleeve down a hair with a grinder, just because since it's canted sideways, it wasn't sliding in that bracket all the way. But that's not their fault, that's just the design of these Rubicon Express control arms. In the future, I will be building long arms, but I really want to have this under the Jeep so I can take all the measurements and go from there, and also see what other long arm kits will work good with this. But with that being said, it's looking pretty good. A lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was like lining up the control arms was going to be hard, but we are good to go. Here's another shot of that angle. You can see how it comes out a lot more opposed to stock, but it's coming along pretty good. Man, this is going to be beefy. In the future, before we hit the trails, we are going to have to relocate our track bar mount. The Barnes 4-wheel drive truss kit came with the new one, and you can tell that under heavy flex, this is going to hit the diff. So the new track bar mount, we cut this off and weld a new one up a little further up so it clears the track bar. But all this is future videos. So for now, let me go ahead and pop these tires and wheels off, drop the axle down, and start buttoning it back up with the spring shocks, track bar, and we still got to bleed the brakes and everything. I don't know if I'll get to that tonight, but man, this is looking good. And I'm really, really liking these wheels. Holy crap. This thing just looks awesome. All right, let's knock this out. Oh man, tight. At this point, we have everything hooked up, hooked the shock back up. So now it's time to transfer over our brake line to our new caliper. So we are gonna be using the Ford caliper. So we have to use the Ford banjo bolts. If your kit didn't come with them, get them online, they're pretty cheap. And new little brass washers as well. We're gonna get those ready. We're gonna go ahead and crack our brake line. Easier said than done when it's hanging here. All right, we are gonna go ahead and take this off. We're gonna try to do it quick so we don't lose a bunch of our brake fluid. The good thing about this swap is that we can reuse our brake lines. As long as they're an aftermarket set of steel or any other extended brake lines, we can reuse them. Plug that little hole with our hand, remove our old banjo bolt, throw our new banjo bolt and washer on, one on the bottom, and pretty quickly try to get this one down here started. We're going to tighten it up. After we're done with this, we want to make sure that we go back to our reservoir and top it off, because this caliper is really big and it's going to start filling up with brake fluid And we don't want to drain out our entire reservoir and have to do a really hard bleed. So, tighten this up. Wipe it down so we can check for leaks. And come up here to our hood. And top it off with brake fluid while our caliper's filling up. Alright, while we're down here, great thing to note is that with the Barnes kit, we can reuse the Ford axle tube breather, and our factory breather hose fits right on there. So you don't have to modify it, you can use your stock one, and for those of you that have already extended them, you can run that too. So that is awesome. Now all we got left to do is throw our new tires and wheels on and hook up our ABS cable. So this is from a Dodge Ram. I'm going to talk about that in the next video when we go into more depth about brake setup, ABS for the front and the rear. But if you guys are already at the stage along with me, I'll throw a link in the description for this, but you get it from 2006 to 2008 Dodge Ram 2500. Bolts right in here, and this plug works perfectly with the Mopar plug. So that's going to make us happy. But I'll talk a little more in depth about the how many teeth are on the tone ring, what should you do for the front, what should you do for the rear. It's a long convo within itself. So I'm going to go ahead and hook this up, and we're going to put our tire and wheel on. All right, now we're going to have some fun. We have to seat the bead of this tire, meaning we have to put a lot of air into it. The front is already sealed, the back has a gap, so we have to fill it up and seat that rear bead. Now, like I've already mentioned, I went with a set of monster valves for these wheels, and that is going to be in an upcoming video. I still have 2 more to do, and I've always been afraid to do them, but it's really not that bad. This thing is awesome. So let me go ahead, put some soapy water on the back side of the wheel and show you guys how fast these monster valves work. All right, so let's do this. We're at 0 PSI, and we're going to fill this bad boy up. The monster valve is a huge hole. It requires a separate fitting to actually air up to, and they include that with the kit, but we're already at 7 PSI, 8 PSI. I'll grab the GoPro. You can just see it climbing. I need to go ahead and lube up the back of the tire a little bit more. The bead hasn't seated yet, so let's go ahead and, I guess it did and we didn't hear it. Yep. The rear is seated, but it didn't pop, so I'm gonna put a good amount of pressure in there just to make sure it's seated all the way. One thing to really be careful of is when you're airing up bead locks, you don't want to stand right here, especially for the first time. In case for some reason you didn't torque down your rings enough, you don't want this to blow out. We're at 28 PSI, we're gonna go up a little bit more. All right, we're at 33, 34, 35 PSI, that bead should be seated. And all we're gonna do is take off our monster valve. You see how quick and easy that was? Holy crap. So stay tuned for that video. We'll do some more demonstrations on the airing down, and of course an install video on how to do it. So it's honestly not that bad, but that is definitely neat, and I'm glad I added it to this wheel. Look who's here, Cassie. Just once I finished everything up, she decides to show up.
I cannot believe you've already got, like,
Yeah.
It's been what, 24 hours?
Not even. I think I've been working on it probably for 8 hours, but I also had to run and get the tires taken off. But we're almost done. We just got to bolt everything up, tighten it, or just tighten everything up. Everything's bolted up. I mean, I still got to weld some stuff, but oh man. And just like that, the Dana 60 is under the Jeep. Let's check it out. So I still have a lot more I have to do tomorrow. I'll probably finish some up tonight. It's getting a little dark. Have to mount my hydraulic ram still. Straighten out the track bar a little bit. It's still offset a little bit. I need to go through and tighten all the control arms, shock mounts, all that stuff. I gotta go ahead and tidy up. But technically the Dana 60's underneath the Jeep and it lined up pretty good. So I'm gonna finish all this stuff tonight and hopefully come back out here tomorrow and get some good daytime shots so I can really show you guys what's going on under there. But overall, it pretty much went together like stock. You know, I've swapped out many axles before, and honestly, it's not that much harder. It is a lot heavier, but with this kit, it lines everything up pretty dang good. So that's enough talking. I'm gonna try to knock out as much as I can tonight and early tomorrow, and then we'll come back out here and take some more daytime looks at it. But man, that is sick. See y'all tomorrow. Well, this is just the perfect day to finish up the front axle. So last night I was up till about midnight knocking stuff out, tightened all the control arms, got everything torqued down to spec. This morning I woke up, I built the our drag link, very similar to how we did it in the with our tie rod in the garage. You just take a few measurements, make sure your steering wheel's straight, wheels and tires are pointing straight, take that measurement, weld it up, and make adjustments as needed. But alignment's pretty spot on from when I made the tie rod in the garage. I mean, my toe settings look pretty good, but let's check it out. So we got everything done. I went ahead and just kind of, for now, mounted my my hydraulic assist right in the bolt hole for my track bar. I do need to tear apart this ram because when I first got it, it was designed for an 8-inch travel. I shortened it internally to be a 6-inch. That's what the JK is. But now with this 1-ton axle, we can get 8-inch of steering travel. So I'll mess with that later, but this is how it's all mocked up for now. Went ahead and filled it with gear oil, still using the factory diff cover. That's going to be changing soon, but for now, while we do the break-in, that factory diff cover will be fine. I had to pour like 2.5 quarts of gear oil in there, so that's a lot of gear oil. I just went with some fairly cheap synthetic stuff, but it is looking amazing, and it's time to take it for a test drive. So see how it handles. Steering's all set up, everything's torqued down. We're good to drive it. Now, when it comes to driving this with only the front axle in, I don't have a drive shaft in, so that's good because it is mismatched gear ratios. I'm still 513 in the back because of the factory axle, or you know, my old axle, and 538 in the front. So no drive shaft. I have the hubs unlocked, so nothing internally is going to be spinning. So we're not really breaking in the gears, but we'll be able to drive it around. Now, for those of you with the 2012 and newer Jeep, you won't be able to do that. You won't be able to test drive it because with the wheel speed sensors hooked up, it's going to throw off your readings because the Ford Dana 60 uses 60 teeth, tone rings in the front, and the JK is a 52. So it's not going to work. Your computer's going to go into limp mode. So luckily for me, 2010, I'll get all those lights on the dash, but it won't go into limp mode. But we're going to go take this for a drive. One thing we really need to do is break in the Powerstop brake pads and rotors. I know I haven't talked about the Powerstop brakes much yet, but they are back there. Went with the drilled and slotted rotors with their powder coated calipers and their high performance pads. Now, to break these in, we have to get the Jeep up to about 40 miles an hour, slam the brakes until we're down to 10 miles an hour, bring it back up to 40, slam on the brakes. Do that a few times, and then drive for about 5 minutes, let them cool down, and do the same thing from 35 down to 5 a few times, and then let the brakes cool. So I'm gonna go to a nice open stretch of road, and what that does is it breaks in the pads and beds them into the rotors so you don't get any of that rotor shimmy. Now, I've never ran Powerstops before. A lot of people say this is a very important step, so I really want to make sure that everything feels fine on the axle before I get it up to 40 miles an hour. So the break-in process is going to be a little different since this is a brand new axle. I really got to make sure everything's good to go before I get it up to that speed. So we're going to take it on a drive, make sure everything's good, break in those pads, and go from there. So I'm not worried about breaking in the axle gears yet because nothing's spinning in there. But I went ahead and bled the brakes. I spent about 20 minutes bleeding them with my little hand pump, and got a lot of fluid, a lot of the bubbles out of there. But when I got in there, the pedal is still very, very soft. I haven't upgraded the master cylinder yet, but that's another video. We'll see if it's drivable and how bad the brakes are without upgrading our master cylinder, since we're running huge calipers. I don't know if the JK, master cylinder and booster will put out enough fluid to really stop it, but we'll see. So let's go hop in the Jeep, take it for a spin, and see if see how the 1 ton feels. You know, like, is it gonna be a boat or is it just gonna feel like a normal axle? We will see. Let's go for a drive. All right, just pulled out of the driveway, and so far the brakes are a little better than I thought. The pedal is extremely soft and it almost goes all the way to the floor, but there's a ton of stopping power. I don't know if that's because of the bigger, you know, calipers on the Super Duty or the Powerstop rotors and pads. I'm not really sure, but we will get the that stiffness back once we upgrade to the J8 master cylinder. But we're gonna go cruise along here and see how it feels. So far, it doesn't feel any more sluggish. Steering wheel's off a little bit, but that's no big deal. Steering's actually pretty responsive. Wow. Honestly, it feels stock. Or it feels like, if I didn't know I just put this axle in, I wouldn't know it. Wow. I was expecting, you know, to maybe feel, you know, the Jeep being really slow and kind of crazy, but honestly, it doesn't even feel like there's a 1 ton axle under there, man. All right, so we're up to 40. We're gonna go ahead and set these pads real quick, and we'll also see how well these brakes work without upgrading your master cylinder. So let's see, slam on the brakes. Not too bad. Not bad at all. So we're gonna bring it back up to speed, do it again. You can see all my Christmas tree lights. All right, we're at 40. 1, 2, 3. Oh man, it's almost locking up these brakes. Like, it's almost locking up the 40s. I am very impressed so far. Holy crap. All right, bring it back up once again. And we're doing it on a downhill now. Slam on the brakes. Man, that is awesome. I can feel my ABS kicking in a little bit, so I never had that before. But holy crap, this thing drives awesome. Now, one thing I do notice is that my alignment's a little bit off. I can feel the Jeep kind of pulling to the right a little bit. So, you know, I'll have to mess with my toe settings, adjust the control arms and everything. My steering wheel isn't centered, but so far, the Jeep is driving amazing. And it feels awesome. So I'm gonna turn around, head back home after I do a few more stops to really set these rotors in, and we'll take a look at the axle one more time. Well, that was a very successful test drive. I will say that honestly, there's no reason so far not to like this swap. In a few videos from now, I'm going to talk about prices and everything, but I really want to get everything complete so I can give you guys a full total price on what I've put into this. But it drives amazing. It's almost a little bit better than stock with the really heavy axle under there. I've noticed on bumps, you know, I go over a bump in the front, I didn't even feel it. When the back end goes over, it like lifted and bounced the Jeep. So having a nice heavy, solid, you know, low center of gravity is actually pretty cool. Now for brakes, I do have to upgrade my master cylinder to get that firmness of the pedal back, but with the Powerstop kit, with the rotors and pads and calipers, it stops actually really good. It's a very soft brake travel, but it stops the Jeep really quick, especially for these heavy axles and 40s. Whereas I would say that my braking is better now than it was before with the, you know, with the Rubicon axles and the Dynatrack 44. So I'm excited to do, you know, more of the braking. I need to do the J8 kit, and we'll talk all about brakes. There's a lot to it, especially when it comes to the rear axle and everything. So honestly, I am extremely satisfied with this swap so far. It drives really well. I still have to mess around with my alignment and get all that in spec. I do have a squeaky control arm bushing, but man, it just looks amazing. Try to get that focus out of there. Oh, so it's not done yet, but it's under the Jeep, it's drivable, and it's coming along good. So got a lot more videos to make. Gonna start working on the rear axle here shortly, but man, this is amazing. I wouldn't recommend for you guys to keep the stock short arms for too long, because I mean, it puts this bushing at a pretty bad angle, and I can hear it squeaking when I'm going over the road, and plus you can tell how torn up those are. But the Dana 60 is under the Jeep, guys. I am stoked, and it drives amazing. You can't beat that. So please give this video a thumbs up, if you will, subscribe to the channel, and go down to the comments and Let me know how you think it turned out. I'm in love with it, but I do have a question for you guys. Diff cover. Whenever I do go with an aftermarket diff cover, leave it black, leave it steel it gray, or paint it red. I really don't know. I'm kind of digging the black look, but with a nice aftermarket diff cover would look really cool. Thanks for watching, guys. Like always, keep on Jeeping on.